Have you ever given a book a 5-star rating before you even finished it? I just did. Hello, Booktube. I'm Marilyn, sometimes called Maya, and today I'm doing my April wrap-up. I have finished a book, as you saw in my introduction. Okay, almost finished a book that is my 5-star read of the month. I didn't finish it yet, and it's still a 5-star read. And it's a mystery. How could that be? I'm going to explain it to you. It's not only the book that I love, but it's everything else about it that's even not book related exactly. For example, I got this book out of the library. It's Ruth Rendell's The Best Man to Die. Okay, so let me give you the setup. The setup is pretty simple. On the eve of his best friend's wedding, the best man dies, as we see in the, he's murdered. And we know that from the first chapter. So, how could it be so good? I'll tell you why. First of all, something not related to Ruth Rendell's writing of the book, which is fabulous, but it's something that has to do with, this is a library book. I took it out of the library, and someone decided that they were going to edit it for mistakes. Is that not hilarious right there? So there's a few spelling errors, and one was knitting, Knitting, and they put the editor of this book put Knitting, and the editor corrected the spelling. And yet I found another spelling error that she missed, so it wasn't a very good editor. And there was other things that she put in to make sure that you got it. That was hilarious to me. Another thing that made this book so wonderful was that I learned a lot about life in the late 1960s in England. Of course, I was around in the 1960s, and I know what it was like in New York, but this was so entertaining. The way that the Chief Inspector Wexford, who has to be, along with Hercule Poirot, my favorite detective in ever. I mean, he is so droll and funny, and he's like the age of what my parents would be. So he's really not getting used to or liking the 60s, the swinging 60s in London. And there's a lot of that here. His daughter, the way they talk to each other, it's really hilarious. That's one thing. She decides, his daughter does, to get a dog, and she foists it on Lieutenant Wexford, and he is not amused, but he ends up taking the dog for walks and saying really funny things. Another thing is that he loves Shakespeare, and there's a lot of things I had to look up in the book, and I'm going to tell you about them now. And this is not even, related really to the mystery itself. For one thing, and I put this down, he wrote, he has to take the dog that his daughter foisted on him again for a walk. And he says, "Full many a glorious morning," quoted Wexford to Clytemnestra, "have I seen flatter the mountain tops with sovereign eye." So I said, okay, what is that? So I looked it up, and it's Shakespeare, Sonnet 33. "Full many a glorious morning have I seen flatter the mountain tops with sovereign eye, kissing with golden face the meadows green, gliding pale streams with heavenly alchemy." And it goes on from there. So I wanted to know what that was. I kind of knew it was Shakespeare, but he was admiring, the scenery. And Ruth Rendell, she's just a wonderful writer, period. Another thing that I learned about was Morris dancers. I'd never heard that term before. and he's looking with amusement at some Morris dancers. So I looked it up, and it was kind of funny. I mean, it's a folk dance, from what I gather, that's from England. And they get dressed in costumes. It's men and women, and they had little handkerchiefs, and they're like jumping around. And there's a few videos on the internet that make it look kind of funny. They have it as a comedy. So that was another thing that I liked about it. And then he says things that, you know, the commentary between him and his daughter is really funny. You know, he says something like, you know, he goes, you know, he's so droll. He says, bully for you. He says, there was one thing that he said about, okay, here. So she's talking about a dentist that plays a part in this mystery. And she says, oh, well, he's not young. And he says, all of 35, I dare say, one foot in the grave and the other on a bar of soap. I cracked up because I had never heard that saying before. Anyway, I think, you know, I told you what I love about this book. I haven't finished it yet. It's a good mystery, too, on top of everything else. It's a good mystery. And there's more than that in it. There's what I've said and so much more. So I really give 5 stars to a book that I haven't finished yet. I don't know who done it, but I don't care. I love it. Best Man to Die. Okay, now back to a book, or I shouldn't say back to a book that I soft DNF'd, and I'll tell you why. It's Trespasses by Louise Kennedy, a darling on Booktube. Some people don't like it, though. Yeah, I've heard that. I got it from the library. I had to wait a while, and that's part of the reason I'm not going to finish it right now. I can tell just by the prologue, that it's well written. It's going to be a good story, but it's heavy, man, as we said in the 60s, and I don't mean it's not that long a book. It's maybe 300 pages or even less. Yeah, about 300 pages. And but it's a topic about the troubles in Northern Ireland. And I really didn't feel that I was in the right mind space to do that right now. So I'm going to bring it back to the library because it was only a 2-week hold. And there's no way I can finish this in 2 weeks. So that's my soft DNF. The next book, I should say 2 books, but the book that I finished is for People April, and it's called The Cost of Living by Deborah Levy. At first, I thought that this memoir wasn't for me. It was over my head. But I felt also, as a memoir writer, I'm a little critical of memoirs in general. And I thought that the author, a wonderful writer, was not giving me enough of herself in her own memoir, that she was talking about topics that were about herself but sort of slanted. But then I spoke to my good friend Lindy at Lindy's Magpie Reads, my erudite librarian friend, who said, give it another chance, which I'm going to do. So I'm not going to rate this right now. I gave it 4 stars. But, okay, so what is it about? It's kind of hard to say what it's about, really, because I said it's a little over my head. But it talks about a woman, Deborah Levy, since it's a memoir, who is 50. She's getting out of a marriage, starting a new life, moving to a new place, not having as much money, and dealing with her mother's death. But yet, the book isn't exactly only about that. It's about how women are treated in general. So it's kind of like a woman's empowerment book, which I like. But I didn't realize that. So it says here, how then in middle age does a woman who possibly never felt at home in her own home leave? How does she attain the same freedom as a man? How does a writer stay a mother? Levy notes the telltale way in which wives often get talked about by their husbands as my wife and are not named. That's interesting. So I need to read this over again. Now, Deborah Levy wrote 2 books. She has, which I think is very clever, it's sort of a living autobiography, as she calls it. Her first book was called Things I Don't Want to Know, and the last book is Real Estate. This book is The Cost of Living. And though it's a little bit, about the cost of living money, it's more about, as Lindy kind of explained to me, more about what's the cost of being a woman, of living in society in today. So I'm going to read it again and give you my star rating on it, because right now I'm not sure. So give it a try. I know I'm going to give it another try. The other book that I'm reading that I haven't finished for People April is The Five. So I'm not going to give it a rating either. It's The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper, and I'm on the second woman. And I talked about this before. The reason this is taking me so long is it's very sad. It's very sad. But yet it goes together with another book that I'm reading. And I also DNF'd this form of the book. It's Middlemarch. And the reason that I DNF'd it is because I have to listen to this on my computer. And I'm not going to sit on a desk and read a book. It's just not, I can't do it in print and I can't do it by listening. So I found on my phone a copy or audio of Middlemarch. And I had read the first story, putting these together, because they do go together in some ways. They're both in the Victorian period. They both, I think, I haven't gone that far into this, but talk about how some people suffered and some people didn't in Middlemarch. And in this one, the workhouses and the poverty and what led up to these women, in a way, being killed by Jack the Ripper. So I did find, Juliet Stevenson in this book is, she's the audio narrator that everybody says is the best. Unfortunately, I don't have her. I had 2 different narrators, one on the audio book and one on the phone that's free that I'm listening to. So, but I'm still getting through it and I'm really enjoying it, but I'm not going to rush. So for People April, I'm still reading The Five. And this one is just I'm continuing it. Okay, so what's next? Another, last month was March Mystery Madness. And I got so many mysteries that I didn't get to finish. And one of the mysteries that was recommended on Janelle's channel, Too Fond of Books, was The Chuckling Fingers by Mabel Seeley. And I was saying that at first I thought that the book was over the top. But I started really getting to know the author and finding out that she was an American who lived in the golden age of mysteries. And she's writing about Minnesota. One thing I liked, let me just tell you first, and what Janelle liked, is that there is not only, there's a Heaton family chart with all their ancestors. I thought that was special, and you don't see that too often, but you do see in older books a cast of characters, or dramatis personae. Probably saying that wrong, I know it's Latin. But that was very helpful, because there are a lot of characters in the book. But it's quite a long book, and that was my only down or complaint that I had on the book. So I enjoyed The Chuckling Fingers a lot. And then I started reading about Mabel Seeley. And I found out that she's a Minnesota. I lived in Minnesota for 5 years. She's a mystery writer from the 30s to the 50s, and she defied the stereotypes of women during that time, characterizing women as strong and independent. So I noticed that, and that's what made me think that maybe it was a modern book and it was a little over the top. But knowing that it was written in that time, I really enjoyed the main character of this. She was independent. There was a little bit of romance in it, but basically it was about the love of two sisters and what's happening in this very weird house. The Chuckling Fingers is referring to the river that makes that sound of chuckling as it starts moving fast. And the fingers are, I think I'm trying to think what they were, but they're part of the river. They're some sort of, they look like fingers, but they're not. Let me see if I can get you. Okay, so it's a real estate, pine-grown estate on Lake Superior. And, it's not her sister, it's her cousin. So her name is Jacqueline, her name is Anne Gay, that's the main character. Her cousin is Jacqueline Heaton, and she's been, they've been close ever since they were children. And, when another person who's a friend of hers and sort of a romantic character in the book writes to her and tells her to come down, that there's trouble, she rushes down and she becomes sort of an investigator, like an amateur sleuth. So I'm trying to think if they say anything about the Chuckling Fingers itself. Okay, so it says Fiddler's Fingers. That's the name of the place that this mystery takes place. So dangerous waters crash against the finger-like rocks. Okay, we got there. Finger-like rocks on the lakeshore, making it sound like a guttural chuckle, one that seems to mock the murder that took place here. But no one is laughing when everyone on the estate becomes a suspect. So it was a really good book. And because it was a good book, I bought the first book that she wrote, called The Listening House. And I'll just give you a short synopsis. Down and out in the Great Depression, Gwen Dacres moves into a seedy and sinister boarding house where she exposes deadly secrets at this classic mystery by Mabel Seeley. So, yeah, it's also a pretty chunkster. But I'm glad that I bought it, because even before I read this, I said, I like the covers a lot, and I like that Mabel Seeley writes about Minnesota, because I don't think I've ever read a mystery set in the north of Minnesota. I lived in St. Paul and a suburb of Minneapolis, but it's interesting because this was taking place in the 40s. I'm not sure when this was set, but it's going to be set. Yeah. So, and it's a different main character, so that's interesting too. Another book that I'm still reading is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, and this is a book that is the read-along for a readathon, very important readathon that I'm doing with Kim of Middle of the Book March next month. And that's Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody, a therapist, her therapist, and our lives revealed. And our readathon is called Mental Health May. So please join us next month, which is coming very soon. Okay, so then I read 2 books for Trans Girl April. And Trans Girl April is a readathon for April that was going on by one of my friends, Kevvie from Say Kevvie, and from Willow from Books and Bow, that I'm just getting to know. So I'll have their information down below. And the first book I read was it's a very short book, and that's the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars. And it's called I'm Afraid of Men. And it's written by Vivek Shraya. So what is it about? Vivek Shraya has reason to be afraid. Throughout her life, she's endured acts of cruelty and aggression for being too feminine as a boy and not feminine enough as a girl. In order to survive childhood, she has learned to convincingly perform masculinity. So Vivek Shraya is an artist. She's a writer. In fact, she writes children's books, and on Lindy's last video, there was a children's book that she wrote. So I'll have that down below too. So you can, so she's exploring her life and how men in particular, and she goes into how women, sometimes she's afraid of women who stand by while men are either violent against women, or she even goes into how when she went into gay clubs, when she was doing before she transitioned, how gay men felt that they can touch her inappropriately, and she didn't like that. So I think this is where it's an honest book. And what I really enjoyed about this book, not only was the honesty, but she's reimagining gender for the 21st century. And she's sort of talking to men, you know, don't be like this. And not every man was like this in her life. But after she was sort of criticized for having been with a woman before she became a woman, before she transgendered. So it's a very interesting book, and I think it's interesting and important for everybody to read. The next book that I read, I gave it 4 stars only because it's a novella. The next book I read for Trans Girl April was Olapapi by John Paul Brammer. And it's a funny book, but it's also important. It's how to come out in a Walmart parking lot and other life lessons. So Olapapi was, when he went on now I'm not familiar with a lot of these websites, but there's a website called Grindr that gay men go on. I knew this before, and but every time he went on, they would say, Hola, Papi. They would call him Papi. And I know, being Puerto Rican, he's Mexican, that it's sort of an endearment, you know. They call women, girl, when I was young, they would say mamita or mami. It's an endearment, and that's what it is. He doesn't speak Spanish, and I really, that's one thing that I really could connect with him on, is that he's biracial. He's Mexican, and his father, I think, is German. And I'm Puerto Rican and Jewish, but I do speak Spanish, but I learned it on my own. And I think he learned it after he was grown too. I'm not sure if he speaks fluent Spanish. But anyway, because of this, he started sort of a column helping gay people come out, who are having, not to come out, because he was in the closet himself in the Midwest. And when he started this column, he's helping people deal with all kinds of problems. And that's how this book is written. It's sort of, every chapter is a question that he's been asked on this column that he's doing. And then it says essays. So the author's note: how to answer a letter, part 1, how to lose a rabbit, how to kiss your girlfriend, how to be a real Mexican, how to come out to your boyfriend in a Walmart parking lot. And so these are like mini essays. So it starts with a letter that he gets, being a columnist that he's writing, that he's answering, and then it tells all about his life. And a lot of it is really funny, a lot of it is touching. So I gave it 4 stars only because it wasn't written for me, and I didn't get a lot of the inside jokes. But he's a good writer, and I recommend this book. I gave it 4 stars, like I said. Okay, so we're getting down to the end here. I just wanted to invite everyone to Mental Health May next month because, like I said, I'm going to be concentrating on that next month. And I hope everybody will listen. I'm trying to do more videos next month, and I'm going to try to do it on my own. For the first time, I'm going to try to edit my own videos, so please be patient with me. I am a baby boomer. I also wanted to please comment and tell me what you think of any of these books if you've read them. What are you reading? What have you read? And what do you plan to read for May? So I love your comments. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in a next video very soon. Aloha!